Hey, what's up, guys? You're listening to the It Takes a Village podcast. I'm Ashley, your host. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Good morning and happy almost Thanksgiving. I hope you are taking it easy, trying to do your best to not do all the things. Again, do your best not to do all the things because you don't need to do all those things and you don't need to put all that extra luggage and weight on your shoulders of getting it all done and doing all the things. So tomorrow, just enjoy the day. But today I want to talk to you guys about Santa. If you are around your kiddos, if they're possibly going to be getting in the car, maybe listen to another episode because I definitely don't want to spoil the surprises that Santa has in store for them. So again, if your kiddos are in the car, make sure you change this episode and do that now. Okay, did you do it? Are they out of the room? They can't hear us? Okay, cool. Okay, so this is the conversation that I've been dreading for years, for actually the past couple years, because I knew this time was coming. And it's that question of, Mom, is Santa real? So what I'm about to share is our story of how we dealt with Santa. I know that some of you guys don't even do Santa, but for those of you that do, and also I want to address some concerns about Santa and having your kids believe in Santa, and also while practicing your faith and your love and admiration for Jesus in the Christmas season, meanwhile also, Santa Claus. So I want to address those concerns as well, but first I'm going to share with you kind of our journey, and I hope maybe this gives you some perspective. Maybe it helps you on your journey or how you will approach this conversation with your kids when it becomes that time to share with them this secret of Santa. Honestly, I'm surprised it didn't come sooner. I think that our school culture, especially our students, because we are a smaller school, are very respectful of each kid having their own beliefs and letting them believe in what they want. So I don't have the issue of kids running around saying Santa's not real and making fun of other kids. They just don't do that. So we got to enjoy it a little bit longer. My daughter is in 4th grade, and just randomly she asked me, Mom, is Santa real? And we happened to be in the car with, my other little guy, and he is 6, and so he very much believes in Santa still, and I did not want to ruin that for him, and so I said, of course, and then I just carried on. Like, I didn't give her an explanation. I didn't go into detail right there and make up a bunch of lies about why Santa is real because she didn't ask. All she asked was if he's real, and I said, of course. So then I talked to my husband about the fact that I think that she's ready to know. She's been asking. She's getting older. And also, we want to make sure when she straight out asks us something like that, there's a difference you can tell, like when they ask when they're little and it's still very out of innocence and curiosity and still joyous. And, they just want to know if the magic is real. And when they're little, I think it's okay to embrace that and to tell them, yes, like the magic is real. And, but when she is at this age in 4th grade and she's asking and she really wants to know, and I can tell that she probably already knows the truth by the tone in her voice, all these things. And so after she asked me this question, I talked to my husband about it, and we talked about, having this conversation in the next week or so. We wanted to make sure that we were able to have this conversation where we wouldn't be interrupted, where it could just be her, myself, and my husband together, and that our son wouldn't be in the room or be able to hear or want to hear. We didn't want it to make it a big deal, like pull her aside into the room, close the door, and tell our son to go play somewhere or anything, you shouldn't make it anything like that. So one night he went to bed early, and so then we just were like, hey, come talk to us in our room. And so then I sat her down on her bed. I did lots of reading of how other parents handled this situation, just to get kind of an idea of what other parents had done, and then kind of create in my mind and prepare myself what I want to do and what I want to say about Santa to my kids. So that way I didn't just go into this conversation flippantly and then try to make something up and, whatever. So I was prepared, and I talked with my husband before we pulled her into the room and said what I was going to say. And he told me the points that he wanted to make or the things that we touched on in this conversation. And so we were on the same page. I think one of our biggest concerns as parents before our kids were even born or like heading into Christmas when they're little and they're babies was the decision of doing Santa or not. Because as believers of Christ, there is kind of this hesitation to do Santa because you don't want your children to feel like you lied to them about Santa. Like, you're having them go along with this whole Santa gig and then, later on you're like, oh, Santa's not real. And then you don't want them to think, oh, wait a minute, like all this time I've also been believing in Jesus and now all of a sudden my parents tell me that Santa's not real, the Easter Bunny's not real, all these things aren't real. What about Jesus? So that was also one of our concerns. But as we were parents, we decided that the pros to Santa outweighed the cons, and that by having intentional conversation and also by the way that we do our faith in front of our kids, with our kids, and just how we are as a family, I felt like it wasn't going to be an issue of them believing that we, or them thinking that we lied to them or that Santa isn't or Jesus isn't real, because it's apparent in our lives that he is very much real. And there's so many other things that I can't, I could go into on and on about in this episode about why like there's so much proof in our lives and from the Bible and whatever that Jesus is real. So if that was a concern for you, in my case, it wasn't. So if you are a believer, if your family is a follower of God, and that's a concern for you, the balance of Santa and also celebrating Jesus in the season, just know that at the end of this conversation that we're about to have with our daughter, that I'm about to share with you guys that we had with our daughter, she confirmed in us that was not even on her mind. So let me just go ahead and get into the story or the experience that we had in sharing this Santa ordeal with our daughter. So we pull her into our room and, the first thing I say is like, hey, the other day you asked me if Santa was real and I wasn't really able to answer you then, but I want to have this conversation now that it's just us. So my first question to her was, hey, like, why did you ask us about that? Do you think Santa is real? Tell us, I want to hear from you first, like what you think about Santa. Okay, so here already as a parent, I'm ready to hear several different responses from her of either one, not even wanting to respond, because if she was a kid like me, I will admit that I prolonged pretending in Santa so that way I could get more presents. I thought that if I believed in Santa, that meant I got more presents and I wanted those presents, and so I didn't even bother with conversating with my parents about that. They never actually brought it up and we never had a conversation. So actually, looking back at this, I'm really glad that I had this conversation with our daughter. I feel like it would have made me feel more, I don't know. I feel like there's something special about including your child in this conversation versus just letting them fall out of this, like age out of Santa and not have a conversation. Anyways, So I was prepared for her to either not respond or want to shyly respond because she thought that the gifts would stop, or I felt like, she would go ahead and give us our answer. So she right away kind of hesitated and kind of looked down. And so then I just reminded her that it was okay, that she could tell us what she thought, that she could tell us, some things that she was thinking about. And so then we went into the conversation of things that she noticed, like last year I did footprints from the fireplace to the Christmas tree with the the ashes from the fireplace. So I took my husband's boots and dipped them in the ashes and then like made footprints to the Christmas tree like Santa. And this kid is like very observant. I had no idea, but she was like, those foot marks match Daddy's big boots. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did she even realize that? Anyways, just little things. And she had found my Christmas wrapping paper the other day that I used specifically for Santa presents. And so she was like, Mom, I saw this wrapping paper and you told me that you and Santa just get the same wrapping paper. And anyways, and so she was like, I never really kind of thought about it, but I was just noticing these things. And so then right then and there, I knew like I was confirmed that this is the time to tell her. She's already catching on to these little like tips that Mom and Dad are Santa. She never like put it completely together though. She was just like noticing similarities and noticing these things that were like what is going on? But she didn't question it. She wasn't like, oh my gosh, like Mom and Dad are Santa. So we had this conversation and I was like, hey, you're old enough now. You're getting mature. You're so grown up. You, I think, are so ready to be in on the secret that mommy and daddy know about Santa. And I'm really excited to share it with you. And so it's time out of this conversation we're having with her. I just want to share with you guys the reason I am edifying in her, how mature she's gotten, how big she's gotten, is because like this is another step. This is something that they've believed in for a very long time, something that has brought them joy for a very long time. And I didn't want it to be like sweeping the rug from underneath them. It's more of like, this is a celebration. This is something awesome that you now get to be a part of. This is a part of growing up, and it's like a positive thing. It's a good thing. And that we're letting her in on this like secret club, or this, club that when you get old enough, you can join. I mean, imagine when you guys were little and your big sister, your big brother let you in on their group or let you in on their conversation. Like, how did that make you feel that they were including you and you felt like you were old enough, or they treated you mature enough to hear it, to be around it, to see it, to whatever? Like it impacts you in a more positive way, and it just gives you that different kind of feeling about the situation and about yourself. So I wanted to make sure that we gave her that, and that by us edifying in her how big and mature she's gotten. So back to our conversation, I tell her how awesome she is, and I tell her that yes, mommy and daddy are Santa. You're absolutely right. And everybody else is Santa too. In our family, we don't tell the kids that all the dressed up Santas are real. Like, I just tell them those are people helping Santa spread cheer. Like, those are people who are generally people dressed up as Santa who are just trying to bring Christmas cheer. And, they do it for fun and to make kids happy. And so we've never told them that all those dressed up Santas are real. So I remind her of all the ways that all the people around the world are bringing Christmas spirit by means of Santa. And she asked, which I would have gone to anyways, but, she asked, where does our letters go then for when we mail them to Santa? And what we've done is I've always sent them to the post office, the special address that you can send it to, where you send them their Christmas letter, and then they will send them a Christmas letter back that you've written as Santa with the North Pole postage mark on it. So I tell her, like, all these people are in on it, like even the post office. Like, it's such a important thing. It's such a special thing that all these people go to these great lengths to make it magical and to make it wonderful. And it's because people genuinely enjoy giving unselfishly, giving without getting credit, giving without needing to say, look what I did. And I remind her of, hey, if mom and dad were Santa, who do you think wrapped all those presents? Who do you think put together those things? And then I tell her, like, there were nights that we stayed up until midnight putting together, because up until now, right, your kids think that Santa did this magically. They don't know all the effort, all the late nights, how many times it took your husband and 500 curse words to put together their bicycle, right? They don't know that because they think that Santa's just bringing it, and it doesn't occur to them that it took you until midnight to put this dang thing together, right? But now the cat's out of the bag, and so I want to let her know that there's a lot of work that goes into this, but we enjoy it. We loved it. We loved doing it. We didn't take any credit for it. So I tell her about all these times that we're staying up late and we're making these things, putting these things together, so that way when they wake up, it's like Santa came. And I tell her, like, that was us. And we never once told you that it was us. We let you guys think it was Santa, and you guys were happy that Santa brought those things, and we didn't get the credit for those things. And that's fine, because we enjoyed seeing the smile on your faces, the magic that it brought to the season, aside from, our faith and the way that we celebrate in that way. And so she was really excited about that. She was really happy and, man, like, honestly grateful, and just like, wow, Mom, like, you guys did that? Like, you stayed up that late? She couldn't believe we stayed up till midnight. I'm like, oh, girl, you have no idea how many kitchens, how many parents across the world are putting together toy kitchens, bicycles, putting stickers on plastic toys, like getting it all ready. And so then we're having this conversation, and y'all, it was so good. Like, we're laughing, we're giggling, we're talking about these things. And I'm like, hey, you're mature enough, so now you get to be in on Santa. You get to be Santa too. And that means that we get to be Santa together for your little brothers. And that means that we also don't ruin the magic for your little brothers, because that's a part of childhood. It's a part of imagination. It's a part of making it special. And so she was really excited about this. Every day since then, since we've had this conversation, she's like, when can we get started? When can we get started? I'm like, calm down. Like, we don't usually do Santa until like the night before. So it's going to be a while. But then I also told her that means that she could be Santa for other people as well. Like, if you feel like you want to give and you want to bring joy into somebody's life, then and you do it without credit, it brings so much joy to your own heart, and it can be to other people besides just your family. So then, as also a part of the conversation, I wanted to remind her that we don't lie, or we are honest in our family. And when she asked me, I couldn't answer her immediately in the car because her little brother was around, and I said, he still believes in Santa, and he's allowed to have his imagination. He's allowed to experience the joy of that, and so I don't want to ruin it for him. So I didn't answer you completely. I just said, of course, because that's true. We are Santa, and the spirit of Santa is very much alive, but however, it's just different than what you thought it was. And so she completely understood, and she confirmed in us that she does believe that we're an honest family, that we wouldn't lie to her. She wasn't angry with us at all. And then we did ask her straight up, like, one of our concerns as parents before we even did this whole Santa thing was we did not want you to be confused about your faith with Jesus, because it coincides with this season of also believing in Santa. And so she was like, absolutely not. Like, I know Jesus is real. And we talked about all the ways that Jesus is real for us. I mean, this might not apply to your family, but for our family, we kind of talked about the things and the signs and the ways that we know that Jesus is real and very much alive in our lives. And so it was just a really good conversation. And I think that had I not been prepared at all for this conversation, it could have been really bad. So if you think that this conversation is on the horizon for you guys, I want you to think about your priorities for the holidays. What kind of message do you want to send your kids? What do you want Santa to be for your family? How do you want to move forward with that before you go into this conversation? Because this conversation can really have an impact on how you guys celebrate Christmas in the future. One thing I forgot to mention that we did remind her at the end of the conversation was to let all the kids have their experience with Santa. Let them have it last as long as they want to. I've already had this conversation with my daughter that you're a kid for a very short time. And I've told her, like, basically from birth until like 12, because then 13, 14, 15, you're considered a tween, and then a teen, and then you're an adult for like the rest of the part, like the major percentage of your life you're spent as an adult. So every child has a right to their childhood and a right to their imagination. And so I reminded her of that, and how we don't need to spoil this for them until they're ready to know, until they come to their parents and ask their parents the question, just like she did to us. And also to encourage her if she hears other kids who are like talking about it, that they don't spoil it for other kids, that she can say, hey, like, and so that was really good. I think that because she has little siblings, that was important for me to mention, because I didn't want that to be an issue, or for her to do it out of anger. If she's fighting with her brother, Santa's not real, so not that she's that kind of person, but I just felt like we needed to have that conversation. And maybe you guys too, if you have other young children who still have time to believe in Santa. And so that is the conversation that we had with her. I felt like it was such an awesome conversation. We were giggling, we were in our bed, we were laughing and talking, and we also shared with her ways that other families celebrate Santa, so that one day she will get to choose what she does with her family and with her children, if she has any. And do they wrap the presents? Do they not? And we just talked about other ways other families do it, and it was just really neat to have that conversation with our daughter. And it was so awesome, honestly. A conversation that I was honestly dreading, because I didn't know how it was going to go, and I felt like it was just crushing her world. Like, that's what it felt like to me. It felt so big, because then I also had to tell her, like, the Easter Bunny wasn't real. And then, like, and she was like, yeah, I kind of figured that. And, and I was like, yeah, it's just all for good fun. It's just all for good fun. And honestly, being a child, or being a person who, when I was a child, I just kind of aged out of Santa. Like, I kind of held on to Santa just so long as I would get presents, because I thought that if I stopped believing, or if I told my parents I didn't, I knew that it was them the whole time, I wouldn't get as many presents. And so I fully embraced that opportunity. And then we never had the conversation. Like, they had to have known when I stopped believing in Santa, but they didn't acknowledge it to me, and we didn't have a conversation, and I never got included in it, like, with them, which I feel like is such a special part of it. Like, I would have felt even better. I don't know. And I just kind of aged out of Santa, and I can tell you now, looking at the comparison between like how my daughter feels after having this conversation and the excitement and joy that this conversation like really brought to her, and then how I like didn't get that opportunity, and just seeing the comparison between the two situations of the ways that we were brought, like figured this whole Santa thing out. My version sucks. And so I hope that you guys consider having that conversation, even if you feel like it's awkward, even if you're nervous about it. I feel like the approach with our children should always be that we are the first ones to have the conversation with them, not their friends, not their family members. It needs to come from their mom and dad. And that's because that cultivates that relationship with you guys and that bond. And there's just something special about it. I can't put my finger on it. Maybe you can think about your child and you're like, yeah, I get it. Like, my parents just let me age out of Santa too, and they didn't really talk to me about why or what. We just it was time, and my parents just kind of flippantly was like, Santa's not real. And that sucks. I feel like that just sucks because there's no inclusion in that. There's something lacking in that. And so I want to encourage you guys, if you're coming into the season of, this conversation is coming, or the time is coming, to go ahead and have that conversation, or to start thinking about what you would say and the things that you want your children to think about, or the legacy that you want to leave behind about Santa, like the things that you instill in your children through Santa. I know for us, this season is going to be a huge season for giving giving unselfishly. And unselfishly, is that a word? That is a word. It just sounds really weird. Unselfishly. No, I'm just going to give up. But you guys know what I mean. It just sounds really weird right now. But to give without taking any credit, to give joyously, and to make other people happy. That's what I feel like this Christmas season is going to get to focus a lot on, because our daughter is now in on being Santa, and that's what he's all about, right? So I hope this episode was helpful for you guys for future conversations. I hope that maybe it gets some of your wheels turning about what you would like to say and do. I'll go over my points real quickly of like what I wanted to touch on in this conversation with my kiddo, and that was to acknowledge how big they've gotten, that they're ready to be let in on this secret, on what Santa is, to remind them that we don't, lie in our family, that I'm always going to be honest with them, to remind them that Jesus is real, and our truths and our beliefs in that. And then also, and lastly, that Santa brings joy to others without needing credit, and giving without needing the attention of that or taking the credit for that. So those are my main points for going into this conversation. And so maybe you can think about what you want to talk on and what you want to touch on. So I thought I would just share that with you guys. I hope it's helpful for you, because I know we're getting into that season. We're getting into that time, and maybe you guys have already seen your kiddos getting a little bit suspicious about this whole Santa deal. So I hope that was helpful to you. I hope you guys have an awesome Thanksgiving. Make sure you share this episode and have an awesome day. Catch you later.